audio setup. Oh, he's getting his bells out.
Something to share. This is just... In fact, I'm in Sarasota, Florida for a week of vacation for Thanksgiving. And...
Ooh.
Welcome to Pints with Jack.
Oh, that was really deep voice there, Andrew, when you were close.
That was smooth jazz, Andrew, on 72.5.
No, backing up Duke Silver today.
But yes, we are now speaking on our new audio setup. So we each now have dynamic microphones to make our speech even more dynamic than before, if that was even possible. And we have boom mics so that we don't knock them, and we can drink without bumping the desks. So, gentlemen.
And you bumped the desk.
I'm not used to the boom mic. Anyway, cheers.
Cheers.
I don't actually have anything.
It's water for me today.
Andrew,
but listeners,
do we have to kick out Matt? He's come something without even a cup of anything.
No, we don't have to kick him out. We just have to drink extra.
Oh, okay.
There we go. I want you guys to take my share.
Well, and listeners, I just showed to David and Matt the gift that I got for them when I was in Oxford. I have a set of 6 whiskey samples that I'll be sending them, along with a prayer card from Catholic Woodworker. So
I will break my alcohol fast to drink those with you, gentlemen.
Advent gift coming there.
I think we should have just a dedicated episode for our patrons of us sampling these and just chatting for an hour.
I think so too. I think that our Patreons probably need to maybe sponsor that, don't you?
No, I'm happy for you to do that.
Oh wow! There's a new.
Go for it.
There's a new 11-year-old Lagavulin that Nick Offerman has under his name. He's of course Ron Swanson from Parks and Rec, and his favorite Scotch is a Lagavulin 16, which is one of my favorites as well. So they've done a special Nick Offerman version of the. So maybe Santa will be good to me this year.
Oh, I read. I didn't read. I read a headline that I still have the article for that I need to read.
I glanced at a few words.
I glanced at a few words. It's a actual magazine for people that are distributors of alcohol, wine, Scotch, spirits. And I guess the issue that's been causing the Scotch prices to be at a pretty hefty premium, the supply issues and all that, are being rectified. And so hopefully things will start going down in price. Like Macallan 18 10 years ago was maybe, or even 5 years ago was like 180 to 220, and now it's shot up to 400 in the last 2-3 years. I mean, it's absolutely insane. And so I just can't wait to see, hopefully, some of these scotches start to come back down into a more reasonable price, because it's just, it got insane.
Well, between that, the dollar soaring against the pound, and the fact that the Eagle and Child is now up for rent, I think we may have a new side hustle, gentlemen. Should we buy it? Should we rent it out?
It needs to be done. It really does. I think they should easily come to the States, do a round of funding at the Wade, the C.S. Lewis University, and just go back and turn it into basically the Inklings Disneyland that it needs to become.
Yeah.
I think I just saw somewhere Notre Dame just dedicated a Chesterton collection that they have in the London or something recently in the last month or two.
Yeah, it's the same collection that Marie and I saw when we were in Oxford the last time, when she was still my simple girlfriend, rather than
she was
my
never
complex wife.
simple, David.
But we got to see that collection at the Oxford Oratory before the Notre Dame took over the collection and moved it to London.
St. Aloysius, right?
Yeah. So
Yeah,
unless
Michael
they
Ward
cleaned
was
it,
the head
my
of that
fingerprints
for
are
a
still on his glasses.
That's great. I think Michael Ward was the head of that for a while. So
I never ended up asking, by the way, how Dr. Poe, why he seemed to potentially disagree with the Planet Narnia stuff. I just kind of kept that out of the conversation with the interview of him, speaking of Michael Ward.
Yeah.
Well, I know a few other deniers. We might have to have a little deniers roundtable at some point. I think that would be good.
I think it's maybe not deniers so much as it is qualifiers. Folks who say, well, there may be something to what you say, as Kirkpatrick would say. So.
I think what was his big point? I think his big point was Lewis never even intended to write all of them, barely mentioned it, and would have had to have planned this. And without the planning. I think that was his. I think if I recall, I mean, I was listening to this on like 2 times speed to prep for it was like a 15-hour audiobook, but it's what I remember vaguely.
Well, I think I don't think it was planned 7 books from the start, but I think he was toying with something. He wanted to see if he could produce a Jupiter book first of all, first and foremost, and then it got out of control. He wanted to do a couple more. Then we got to the Voyage of the North Treader, and he thought, okay, 3 is good enough, and then pushed to do the complete 7.
Well, and if you look at Paul Ford's timeline, which is mostly, I think, accurate in Companion to Narnia, they were written in 5 years, in a five-year period. And many of them were written kind of right back to back. And so I think it's not at all inconceivable that the idea could have kind of grown on him, And so the Jove for the first one and Venus for the last one, the last being the magician's nephew. The last completed anyway. So I think that idea kind of started to germinate in his brain as he decided that there might be 7. So,
and I think what was it? I think the second point was, so that was his first point. I think the second point was he pointed out how, I'm not familiar with the planet Narnia, but aren't there different themes from the planets that end up making their way in the book? And then he pointed out how you can argue many other planets for all the different books. Like you can cherry pick certain things that make it seem like a theme, but then you can actually just apply that same thing to a different book and create the entire thing as well.
Again, it sounds like we should have a grudge match, because I think that it's true that these themes, if a theme occurs in Lewis, by its very nature, the theme is going to occur almost everywhere. And he's this remarkably, as Michael or as Stephen Beebe has pointed out, this remarkably holistic writer. And so I just did a speaking engagement for a group called Faith Ascent in St. Louis with Jerry Root. And we were having lunch, and he got around to his favorite topic, which is
reality is iconoclastic.
All reality is iconoclastic. And, of course, I got to mine the fact that the Magician's Nephew should be read first, and that there's no fiction worth reading after Narnia. But the thing about Lewis is, if it occurs, it's going to occur everywhere. And so, and absolutely, there are some of the themes and some of the planets that intersect. And of course they would, because they are individual planets, but they're also one whole solar system. In addition, these are not as carefully mapped out as Tolkien's mythology was. I mean, Tolkien had maps and chronologies and histories and languages and all of this.
It took a decade.
And it was Lewis that pushed him, to write it into a story. So Lewis is writing fast, and he's writing fast while he is still very busy as an Oxford tutor. And so if he had Tolkien's kind of time, in addition to a little bit more of Tolkien's kind of mentality, I think that they would have been much more cohesive and fully developed. But the fact that he's doing everything that he's doing in Narnia, so many things, before we ever knew about the planets, there's so much going on. There's all these Christian doctrines. There's this mythological thing. There are literary surprises everywhere. It's just a rollicking good story. The fact that all of that is true, and there's this overarching structure that perhaps Lewis didn't work out as assiduously and as carefully as, say, Tolkien. I think it's remarkable, and to me it doesn't negate the idea of the overriding structure of the 7 planets at all.
So I like the idea of a Pints with Jack debate where we bring on Michael Ward, Hal, and we can have, I was about to say Andrew's a moderator, but I have a feeling he's a bit of a biased moderator on that one. So maybe Andrew can
bring me out as a panelist.
He's like, put me on the side of pro Michael Ward.
Yeah. These are, Lewis said, when one has read a book, I find there's nothing so nice as discussing it with someone else who's read it, even though it tends to produce rather fierce arguments. And I say because it does so. I think that those arguments, taken in the right spirit. And I've never met Hal in person, but I think that he's exactly the kind of person with whom those kinds of arguments would be a wonderful good time.
Also, I really want you, Andrew, to do an entire episode on reality is an iconoclast with Dr. Jerry Root, because I just remember that conversation that you had with him was one of the more mind-blowing conversations. I've ever heard.
Thank you.
And then
Yeah.
this is a compliment to you in the form of a critique. Then it ended really fast, and I was like, I want to hear more. I remember it just like ending at 45 minutes. I'm like, this is just getting good. What are you doing, Andrew? Keep talking.
Well, we had the technical issues, and then I was just sweating
I didn't realize
my head off. It was 104 degrees in the
Well,
garden.
that'll do it.
Yeah, in the back garden there at the kilns, and my beer had gone warm. It had been in the icebox beforehand, and so and I was trying to be mindful of the time. But certainly Jerry is marvelous, and I've learned so much from him, and I think it'd be great to have him on again.
Mm-hmm.
So, David,
Well-
what else is happening? What's going on? Yeah.
I wanted to do a little quick catch-up, because this is technically the first thing that we've published since we ended the last season. So, updates. What's everyone been up to?
Well, first, I'm the most prepared for this season as I have been for any season, because
dear.
David has
Oh,
given
no, that's
me
a good thing. Okay, right.
Well, it's more usually I read it as we go, so I'm very prepared for an episode, but I tend to not be like quote unquote prepared for the season in the sense that I like to read it time by time. But due to the nature of the book, and then also these multiple interviews that I'm recording before we even start the book, I've actually learned a ton about the Ransom trilogy well before diving into us actually recording a single episode. So I'm excited
Yeah,
about
that's
that.
Good. Have you actually read the whole trilogy yet?
Not the very last one. So I've read
Okay.
this one, and then in class we did Paralandra.
Okay.
And so I actually pretty distinctly remember that one. And then we never did Out of the Silent Planet. And so,
You mean That Hideous Strength?
yes, sorry, that hideous strength. I swear I'm prepared.
Hey, a word of advice and a book to add very quickly to your shelves. And also, I think it's the advice that I give to anybody, especially reading the Ransom books the first time, or when you read the Ransom books the first time, you're really aware of what the Inklings were and the dynamics. I don't consider it a trilogy. I consider it a tetralogy. And so it's Out of the Silent Planet, Paralandra. And then I pause and I read Charles Williams' book, The Place of the Lion, which in some ways gets really strongly echoed in That Hideous Strength. And it's the first book of Williams's that Lewis reads. It makes an instant friendship happen, and within 4 years of Lewis reading that book and writing to Williams about it, Williams has moved to Oxford, becomes an Inkling, and so That Hideous Strength is written under the influence, not only literarily because of his novel, but because of his actual presence in the Inklings of Charles Williams. And so read the place, Charles Williams, The Place of the Lion, before That Hideous Strength. I think it also helps with the adjustment that people sometimes have trouble making between the first two books, which are kind of a piece, and then the last book, which seems very strange and very different, but it doesn't seem very different if you've read Charles Williams. What do you think, David?
No arguments from me. And if anybody would like to know more about That Hideous Strength, Andrew may well be on another podcast soon talking about it. So you'll get all of the details there. But we'll keep that back a little bit until that's been confirmed and the episode's gone live.
Great.
Well, and to answer your original question of what I've been up to, I've been on this sort of health and wellness, healing journey, all this stuff, kind of.
You became a monk.
Won't go into
Yes.
too much detail. I became a monk. I'm most likely this is percolating into a much more concrete idea, and I might partner up with a buddy with doing this. I might build next year a more intentional, like Exodus 90 type journey for individuals, probably geared towards men in the beginning, but you expand to beyond that. And I want to combine the Christian side of it, but then also a lot of the science, nutrition, habit formation, not going from 0 to 60. And I'm sort of thinking about doing it month. And so the first month would be focusing on the body, then the mind, and then the spirit, which I know are kind of cliches, but the body, what I have found in my own personal is focusing on the health, like good sleep, good diet, good exercise, makes the foundation of discipline and habit 10 times easier. I mean, your energy levels are way higher. Waking up and doing, let's use the Exodus 90 cold showers, which are actually very much rooted in science, is 10 times easier when you get a good
I'm a
night's
science
sleep.
denier on that one.
What'd you say?
I'm a science denier.
I will send you the neurobiologist Andrew Huberman's hour episode on cold showers, diving into all of the dopamine, epinephrine, adrenaline, all that good stuff.
And you can read it in your nice warm bath, David.
And then I will, you know what, David, just go through my 90-day program I'm put together. But then the next part is very much going to be focused on, when I say the mind, dopamine. The more I've studied and researched the impact of cheap dopamine and the fact that we have access to dopamine without any sort of work and ethic, I think has led to a destruction of masculinity in many senses. And so that, and then if you really learn to control your dopamine and harness that, plus have a really good base of the body, you can really start to dive into more of the spiritual practices. 30 minutes of silence isn't hard. Spending time with reading and focusing and diving in and doing journaling and all those things. I want to create a program very much leveraging the best practices, both in the scientific side, the psychology side, and pull it together into a program. So I've been taking a whole bunch of notes. Chris Hazel, a friend of mine, who's a great writer, is gonna help me with this, and we're gonna put this together. And I'll actually, I've already talked to someone about a funding source for this, and so might turn it into a beautiful video, podcast, all this different stuff, and put this together. So we'll see, but it's getting much more concrete. I have a whole document going. So that's the big thing that I hope comes together, and I hope can help a bunch of individuals experience true freedom, to be able to live, love, have a relationship with our Heavenly Father. Laugh.
Dance.
Dance.
Well, as
Eat,
C.S.
love,
Lewis
pray.
said, dance like no one's watching.
Yeah. So anyways, that's the big thing, and I do think it will come together.
That's great.
Very cool.
What about you, David? What's the latest?
Well, since the season ended, I had pretty much a month in England, so I got to take my wife and child to England. So this was the first time my mother was meeting my wife as my wife, and the first time she was meeting my son in the flesh. And we spent lots of time together. Oh yeah. But we went to, we spent a week in the village where she lives, and then we spent a week up in the lakes, and we spent a little bit of time in London, showed my wife the sights, and we stopped off in Oxford for a couple of days, got to see Stephen Beebe, and he even gave up his spot to speak to the C.S. Lewis Society, so I got to address them instead.
Oh, what a joy. He's such a kind man. To Steve. To Steve.
Did you record this talk with a little lapel mic or something?
It is recorded.
Here, good. You can drop
Matt,
it on the
here,
feed some point?
I'll toast Steve for you. To Steve. There we go.
I want you to undo both of those and just take them right now.
No, won't happen. These are yours.
These are yours. Yeah, don't you dare drink those then.
A couple of other things. Speaking of projects, I've got a project related to orthodoxy. So the G.K. Chesterton book, because there isn't really, I think, a good annotated edition out there. There's the Ignatius Press one, but it's pretty thin on annotations. And the work itself is out of copyright, so I am going to have a book club with my brothers-in-law, and together with my wife, I think we're going to put out, because you can do this with Lulu and print, books yourself. I think we're going to print up a bunch of copies of our own annotated edition of Orthodoxy with an introductory essay, just a page or two before each chapter, and then one overall, just to introduce people, because it's probably the number one book that people have come to me and said, I want to understand it, I don't get it. And now we can give them something. So that's one of the projects that's in the works as well.
David,
when I have
you may
all this
want
extra
to
time.
reach out. Yeah, exactly.
I'm trying to think. If people
you may want to
to
reach out to our... go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say it's not related to orthodoxy, but my professor wrote a book the size of Chesterton's Catholicism, and incredible book, just going through 6 of Chesterton's big themes, pulling in the quotes, and just gives you a really comprehensive understanding of what made Chesterton, and it's very helpful. So people, and it's just very accessible, I guess, if people want just like a Chesterton book, because I agree, he's so tough. I took a course on him, and I had to read every paragraph 5 times.
Yeah. Maybe worth at some point reaching out to the dear sweet man Kevin Belmonte, who wrote the quotable Chesterton and Defiant Joy. He's a wonderful guy. I think that the ladies would be blessed to have him on the podcast. He's written a number of other books, including a book that became the biography of William Wilberforce that became the basis for the Amazing Grace movie. And so he was a consultant on that movie, and he's written about Dwight Moody, and he's written about Lewis. And so worth reaching out to Kevin Belmonte, and he's pretty easily findable out there. And once again, just a prince of a man. And so if not for your project, certainly Pints with Chesterton would be blessed to have him on.
What about you, Andrew? What have you been up to?
Oh, my goodness. So running out of days left to be a deacon in the Episcopal Church. I just last week got an official letter from my bishop. It's called a take order letter. And my bishop in the Diocese of Texas, Andy Doyle, has said that I've passed all the qualifications to become a priest and that I can be ordained early next year, and will allow my bishop in Central Florida to do that. And so I will be ordained in Florida. I don't have to go back to Texas for that. Here. We don't have an official date yet, but as soon as we do, I'll put that out there. I'm hoping that some folks will come. My wife's family will all be there. Those are usually held on a Saturday. And so, we're looking for maybe
like roughly in January, December, or like a rough...
I'm eligible no earlier than Christmas.
Yep.
So we're hoping for a January 7th date, which is also our anniversary.
Because I might be in Florida in mid-January.
Okay. Yeah, it would probably... There's an election in Florida on the 14th for a new bishop, and so hopefully we'll get it done before then so that I can be resident. But that's great news. That's been a long, long journey, and I'm glad to have that in the sights.
Glory be to Christ.
Oh, my gosh. And my Lewis classes go well. The Screw Tape class is available online at churchofthemessiah.com. And
.com.
Yeah.
I love the delay there.
we were shocked to get the domain name, but it's been great to walk alongside with parishioners, to learn from my mentor. Kristen just finished writing a book. Was that a week ago?
Book number 62?
Week and a half. 84.
Wow. I thought I was
Something like
over-exaggerating as a joke.
No.
That's unbelievable. She's like a Peter Kraft.
Yeah, I was going to say she's hot on his heels.
Yeah,
No.
she is.
How many does Peter have?
It's over 100.
Okay. Yeah. She always poo-poos that number, and she wrote a lot of books for elementary school students, but I'm super proud of her. She's writing another one right now. Yeah. And let's see. Oh, she and I have been invited by the Anselm Society in Colorado Springs to go and do Advent in Narnia, Christmas in Narnia event.
Nice.
So we'll go do some storytelling from the Chronicles of Narnia on December... December 3rd.
So wait, what's the Anselm Society is related to like the Anselm's the person Lewis debated, correct?
No, you're thinking of
Anselm is-
Anscombe. Elizabeth
Oh.
Anscombe.
Anselm, the bishop in England in like 700s or something.
No, way off.
Yeah.
Swimmy,
Major
theologian.
Samsonite. I was like, I was quite excited. I was like, Anselm, Lewis, okay.
The Anselm folks are actually they're really dedicated to the renaissance of the Christian imagination. So every year in the spring, they've got a conference called Your Imagination Redeemed, and they love Lewis and Tolkien. They do Shakespeare pub nights. They do Chesterton and MacDonald. Diana Glyer has been there. I think Malcolm has been there. Michael Ward, Matthew Clark. Lancia Smith, just a wonderful gathering. I once was just so impressed with them. I never put in a paper abstract and say, hey, can I give my paper at your conference? Because I just can't afford it. But I wanted to be part of them, and I had a free mileage ticket. And I'm like, yeah, can I come and give my paper at your conference? And the president emailed me back and said, no, you can't give your paper at our conference. I'm like, why not? It's a good paper. It's about 2 We Have Faces. Said, we want you to do a standalone event. And so I gave my whole Till We Have Faces thing in Glen Erie Castle, in this Tudor castle in Colorado Springs. And they were incredibly warm and generous, and they just love the art. So we're going to have a big Narnia-type Christmas party. Chris and I will be part of that. So, yeah, and we're just clicking along with the rest of all the things. So, yeah.
And can I confirm, David, switching gears, the last one that we attempted to record didn't go out right?
That's correct. Yes, we had a
Beautiful.
few technical
So
issues last time.
So I didn't embarrass myself with the sharing the conversation of my stupidity with the Saruman Gandalf mishap text I sent you guys.
Well, I was going to talk about Rings of Power, but we're now a little short on time, so maybe we will discuss that for our common room next month in December.
And we may need to do a Tolkien-themed common room.
Okay, next time. That's what we'll do.
I've got a beautiful, well, and then, he wrote the Father Christmas letters. Do you know about this, Matt? Tolkien wrote a series of letters to his children from Father Christmas. And we have a copy that actually has envelopes in the pages, and you can pull the letters out with his original handwriting on one side and all of his illustrations. So maybe we'll do a Tolkien-leaning, Christmas-themey common room next time.
I love that idea.
That's very cool. One thing.
How's Alexander doing?
Oh, he's great. Growing like a weed, running around like a madman.
Is he talking yet?
Oh yeah. Well, I've got Mama, Dada, oh baby. Because whenever he sort of would fall over, Marie would go, oh baby. So he now mimics that. He's very good at no.
Oh boy.
We have ya, da for duck, do for dog, down for down. He's also quite good at animal sounds. He's got cats and dogs pretty much done. And he can sort of do rabbit because you do your nose when you're trying to make it sound like a rabbit, but he always finds it too funny and starts giggling. So
David said he's got the different animal sounds down. I could just see David with a list. Okay, Alexander, we've got this animal sound. Let's work on ostrich next week.
Oh no, I have a book with a little button where you press the sound and it'll play it. So it'll say dog, and then it'll have the sound of a dog. So we do that, and the book has facts about each of the different animals, and it's one of Alexander's favorite books.
Well, David, you'll like this. I just posted on my social media. My little 4-year-old niece, the last time I was here around Christmas, we did a proper tea, and made tea for all the women in the family, and made some for Audrey. And so I have a picture of her sitting on my lap having a proper cup of tea. And yesterday, she asked her mom, "Can you make me a cup of tea like Uncle Andrew does?" And so we brought some PG tips, and I'm going to make her a proper cup of tea, and we'll hot the pot and all the rest. So
racing them right.
Cheers for England, who just won 6-1 today, right?
Mm-hmm.
U.S. was up when I last looked too.
We'll see. One thing I meant to say about what I've been doing with the time off, I've been doing a bunch of work on the website. So I'm bringing all of the show notes into line with each other so that they are more consistent because, we've been doing this over the course of 5 years, and the format and the content and all that kind of stuff changed over time. And so when we moved over to pintsofjack.com, it pulled in all of that legacy. So I've been smoothing all of those out. And we now also have an essays page where I've got every single essay that Lewis wrote listed, where you can find it, a link to a YouTube video where the audio can be found, and then all of the podcasts I can find that talk about that specific essay. So whether that's from the Wade Center, William O'Flaherty's All About Jack, or the newest one, the Lesser Known Lewis podcast, all of those are now up there at pintsofjack.com/essays. So
is it the Lesser Lewis podcast or the Lesser Known Lewis podcast?
Lesser Known Lewis podcast.
And
we will be doing. We will be doing a crossover with him soon enough.
Wow. I know he's in our Slack community, so he'll see this.
Well, and then tomorrow, Matt, we'll start out with a prayer. So in 2003, C.S. Lewis was adopted into the Book of Common Prayer in the Book of Lesser Feasts and Fasts in the Episcopal Church. And so there's a collect and readings and a collect for Lewis. And so as tomorrow is his Saints' Day, when we talk with Diana Glyer, we'll probably have to pull that out.
I love it. Let's do it.
Great.
Well, we are now at the half-hour mark. I think this test drive of our audio has been a roaring success. So for those of you who have drinks, cheers.
You're not lying.